Have you ever felt left out, especially in the fall, because your friends want to hang out and watch scary movies and you just can't do it? Does the idea of watching anything remotely scary make your stomach do somersaults? Do you think about how hard it'll be to go to bed that night as the memories of that horrible thing you just watched creep in? You are definitely not alone. Although horror movies do incredibly well at the box office, many people just can't bring themselves to watch one. Me included. Well, today I'm here to help you. Take heart, friends, because we are about to come to your rescue, or more specifically, my writer Matt. I'm Mike from List 25, and this is 25 scary movies for people who don't like scary movies. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. After the massive success of Halloween and Halloween 2, Master of Horror John Carpenter decided Halloween movies didn't always need Michael Myers. In fact, his idea was to make the Halloween franchise a series of anthology movies, each telling a different story. The first of these was Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This movie follows two people as they uncover a plot by an evil mask maker to kill thousands of children by casting an ancient Celtic ritual powered by a piece of stolen boulder from Stonehenge and activated by a TV commercial for his silver shamrock masks. It's actually much better than it sounds. If it didn't have Halloween in the title, more people may have wanted to see it, but it was an incredible flop. And the studio decided it did need Michael Myers in all the Halloween movies. Hey, at least you could say you watched a Halloween movie. Fade to black. Eric Binford lives for the movies, and sometimes he kills for them too. This was the tagline on the posters for the 1980 movie Fade to Black. Binford, played by Dennis Christopher, is a troubled, bullied, disturbed young man who is obsessed with movies. After fantasizing about one of these films, he inadvertently helps cause the death of his aunt. This sends him spiraling into his Hollywood dreams as he seeks revenge on those he feels wronged him. While this movie is a bit dated, it's a great jumping off point for those who are unsure about the horror genre. Horns. Daniel Radcliffe made a lot of money from the Harry Potter franchise. He made, and continues to make, so much money that he can take whatever acting gigs he wants to, if he wants to. This has led to him taking weird roles in very odd movies. One of those roles was in the movie Horns. Radcliffe plays a young man who people think is responsible for his girlfriend's murder. One day he wakes up with a set of horns and supernatural powers. He uses this new evil gift to find her killers. As it isn't technically horror, but just has some horror elements, it's a movie the skittish should definitely try to watch. Besides, it's a really well-made original film that is well worth your time. The Frighteners. Back before Peter Jackson decided every movie he made had to be an epic masterpiece, he was making smaller, horror-ish movies like Dead Alive, Heavenly Creatures, and this next one on our list, The Frighteners. Michael J. Fox plays a con man who can communicate with the dead. He uses this gift to have a couple of ghosts haunt people's houses. He then swoops in and takes care of them, for a price. The grift works pretty well until he crosses paths with a grim reaper who can take the lives of the living as well as the afterlife from the dead. All in all, this is a fun movie with its share of jump scares and tense moments. It would be a really good movie for someone wanting to test the waters of horror. Slither. James Gunn wasn't always directing blockbusters like Guardians of the Galaxy for Marvel or Suicide Squad for DC Warner Brothers. He originally worked on a wide variety of projects. He wrote the original live-action Scooby-Doo movies, the screenplays for 13 Ghosts and Dawn of the Dead, and directed the movie Slither. Slither is a tribute to old drive-in sci-fi B-movies where aliens in the form of slugs invade a town with sights on world domination. For those who don't really like horror movies, it may be unnerving, but Slither is just crazy fun. Sometimes a little gross, and very tense at times, but always fun. Christine. Based on a story by Stephen King and directed by John Carpenter, this movie should be terrifying. Well, it's about a demon-possessed car that has a crush on its new owner and a mean, jealous streak to go along with it. Yes, it sounds ridiculous, and it is. But in Carpenter's hands, it really does work. It has a few great jump scares and some pretty intense scenes, but it won't really scare you. Actually, the ridiculousness makes it better.
19.
This Is the End. Most of you have heard of This Is the End, the very R-rated horror comedy written and directed by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. While all of Hollywood's A-lister young stars play ridiculous, awful versions of themselves, the apocalypse happens. They turn on each other in one of the best comedy horror scenes ever. While this is clearly a comedy, there are enough horror elements that it works at that level as well. If you need any other motivation to watch it, 3 words: Pineapple Express sequel. Well, kind of. The only other thing I can say is, poor Channing Tatum. He deserves so much better.
18.
You're Next. You're Next is a horror movie that takes the final girl trope and turns it upside down. The wealthy but estranged Davison family comes together to celebrate the parents' anniversary at their remote summer house. When a group of crossbow-wielding, heavily armed strangers invade the house, things get bad. But they may have more to handle than they thought. Seeing a character in a scary movie actually behave in a manner that makes sense is a fresh idea, not often seen in the genre. This movie won't scare you as much as it'll have you cheering at the end.
17.
Sleepy Hollow. One of Tim Burton's better efforts, Sleepy Hollow takes the Washington Irving story of Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman and turns it into a creepy adventure. Starring the always strange Johnny Depp and everyone's favorite dark goth girl Christina Ricci, Sleepy Hollow creates a gothic world where danger is suspected in every shadow and no one can be truly trusted. Depp plays Crane, a teacher in the Irving story, but made a detective in this version who is investigating deaths in the area. Always fearful and timid, Crane must confront the legendary Headless Horseman to escape with his life. It's not scary to watch, but it definitely has that creepy vibe one is looking for.
16.
Creepshow. If you've never seen Creepshow, or the Creepshow television series on Shudder, and if you've never read a Creepshow comic, it doesn't matter. This movie is just scary, campy fun. This is an anthology film made up of different stories presented like those found in a Creepshow comic. There are 5 separate stories, each one a little more campy and a little grosser than the one before. The Crate is one of the silliest, but also most fun of the segments. As with quite a few movies on this list, Stephen King wrote the screenplay for this over-the-top fright fest, and he even does a little acting in The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill. One thing though, if you are afraid of cockroaches, this is not the movie for you. Fair warning.
15.
Willy's Wonderland. Make a live-action R-rated version of Five Nights at Freddy's, add Nicolas Cage as the guy who has to stay in the building until dawn, and some kids who want to stop the evil, and you have one amazing scary movie. This movie shouldn't be any good, and some would argue that it isn't. But this is one of those movies that is exactly what it's supposed to be, and nothing more. And that's all you can ask of a scary movie. As a side note, Nicolas Cage never speaks during the entire movie. Not one word. Ever. Seeing that performance is worth watching all by itself. I could not do this job if I didn't speak. It would just be 15 minutes of nothing.
14.
1408. This movie is scary and unnerving, to be sure. In it, John Cusack plays a travel writer who investigates supposedly haunted destinations. He heads to the Dolphin Hotel in NYC to debunk the legend of room 1408, which is said to be one of the most paranormally charged hotel rooms in the world. The manager tries repeatedly to dissuade him from entering the room, but Cusack's character goes for it anyway. Horror ensues. This is definitely a movie that'll creep you out completely, but it won't stay with you and scare you for long. Well, unless you watch it in a hotel room. Don't do that.
13.
Fright Night. Both. In 1985, a cult classic was born. Fright Night was not a comedy. It was very much a campy, weird 80s horror movie. No slashers, no gore, no uber violence, just a really good scary film about a kid who has a vampire move in next door. The kid recruits a washed-up old TV host who claims to have hunted supernatural creatures to expose the vampire and save his family and friends. In 2011, the movie was remade into a more serious, more traditional horror film. The setting is updated to Las Vegas, and the vampire, who is played by Colin Farrell, is more threatening, bringing the horror front and center. The TV host was replaced by a Vegas showman, played by David Tennant, whose shows are based on the occult, and Anton Yelchin takes over as the boy next door. I can understand those who prefer the original, but in a lot of ways, the remake is much better. Just not the CGI. That's not great.
12,
The Fly. Until The Fly was released, Jeff Goldblum was a little-known actor. This movie put him on the charts in a big way. Goldblum played Seth Brundle, a scientist who believes he has unlocked the secrets of teleportation. When he decides to test out his invention, he doesn't realize a simple housefly has found its way into the device with him. As opposed to the original version of the movie where a fly's head and arm appear on an otherwise human body, the remake sees Brundle slowly and agonizingly turn into a fly. It is absolutely gross and very disconcerting, but it's really good. I heard that movie had good buzz. I will see myself out.
11,
Happy Death Day. Happy Death Day is really easy to explain. It's essentially Groundhog Day, but if Bill Murray was stalked and murdered every day. The heroine, Tree, yes, that's her name, wakes up on the morning of her birthday ready for a day of celebration. At the end of the day, however, she gets murdered by a killer in a baby mask. Then she wakes up. And this happens over and over and over again, with each day getting her closer and closer to revealing her killer. Happy Death Day is a new twist on a familiar story that makes watching it a cool experience.
10,
Attack the Block. A teenage street gang from a poor, rough area of London have to defend themselves and those who live in their neighborhood when some malevolent aliens attempt to take over. Attack the Block is one of the most overlooked movies of the 2010s. Well written, great direction, and really solid performances from the cast. This is more of a sci-fi action thriller than it is horror, but it has enough tension and jump scares to be high on a scary movie lover's list of rewatchable films. And if you became a fan of John Boyega from Star Wars, this is the movie that actually put him on the road to stardom.
9,
Invisible Man. Have you ever seen the original Universal Pictures version of The Invisible Man? I get that it's a classic and all that, but it just doesn't hold up at all. For its time, I'm sure it was shocking and scary, but watching it today is like watching a Saturday Night Live sketch. Seriously, it's hilarious. In an effort to reboot their monster universe, Universal Pictures partnered with Jason Blum of Blumhouse and started working on rebooting the properties for a modern audience. The Invisible Man was the first film from that partnership. It takes an old, silly idea and turns it into a tense, frightening film that'll absolutely creep you out. And you won't see it coming. Haha, I'm not done. I'll be here all night, folks.
8,
What We Do in the Shadows. What if you took The Office, replaced the staff with vampires, and put them in an old, decaying, creepy house? What We Do in the Shadows, the movie Taika Waititi was desperate to make, follows that simple, basic plot. While there are certainly horror elements, this movie is essentially a comedy about four roommates learning to coexist in the modern world, and they're vampires. There are some legitimate scares to be had, but they are mostly played for laughs. The tone of the film is somewhat spooky, and there are scenes of violence one would expect from a movie about vampires, but this would be a good place for someone wanting to get into scary movies to start.
7,
Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead is the first of Edgar Wright's Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy, which are three genre films loosely based on the director's life. Hot Fuzz is about a demon-worshipping cult, At World's End is a sci-fi horror movie about drinking, and Shaun of the Dead is about zombies. Yes, it's a comedy, and much of it is played for laughs, but there are some serious scares in there, and the tension builds no differently than a serious horror film would. This is one movie everybody should see. Even all you people who don't like scary movies, you'll like this one, and I can actually attest, I love Shaun of the Dead. It's really funny and really good. So, hey, I've seen a movie on this list, so you can trust me. I haven't seen the others yet. I hate horror films.
6,
Cabin in the Woods. I'm not telling you anything about Cabin in the Woods, because the less you know about it, the better the movie is. The best part of Cabin in the Woods is figuring everything out right along with the characters. This is the movie that gives you all the standard characters and situations that are always found in these movies. You know, the ones that make us roll our eyes and say, oh, come on, nobody would do that. But then it explains why those cliches are important. You'll just have to trust me that Cabin in the Woods, while gory and violent, is the perfect scary movie if you don't like scary movies.
5.
Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. Everything Tucker and Dale vs. Evil does turns horror movie tropes completely upside down. This one is one of the best dark comedies of the last couple of decades, and I do mean it's a comedy. I can't really tell you about the movie because, like Cabin in the Woods, knowing too much can ruin the viewing experience. The kills in this Tucker and Dale are some of the most creative you'll ever see, and you may actually feel a little bad that you are laughing so much at people being gruesomely stripped of their lives, but you will laugh.
4.
Trick or Treat. Like Creepshow, Trick or Treat is an anthology movie. Unlike Creepshow, there is a thread flowing through the movie that ties the whole thing together. And if you've ever been to a Spirit Halloween store, you've certainly seen the movie's icon, Sam, the little pumpkin-headed trick-or-treater. I won't lie, for the uninitiated horror movie watcher, this one could get scary. But what makes it so good is that every story has a twist. Things in this movie are not always what they seem. This is easily one of the most underrated horror flicks of all time.
3.
Studio 666. The Foo Fighters are ready to record a new album. The problem is, Dave Grohl is having writer's block and has no new ideas. The band decides they need a change of scenery, so they rent an old mansion with a creepy past high in the Hollywood Hills. Welcome to Studio 666. The creative floodgates soon open, and Dave becomes obsessed with this new piece of music that just won't get out of his head. This movie is Foo Fighters having a great time making a horror movie like a bunch of little kids pretending. Well, very adult, murderous pretend, but you get the idea. A word of warning though, because of the tragic passing of Taylor Hawkins, some scenes may be a little tough for fans to watch. Just saying.
2.
Ready or Not. A woman gets married to the love of her life and meets the family she has just become a part of, only to find out that to be one of the family, she has to play and win, or survive, a game chosen at random. She gets hide and seek, which should be easy enough. Except that in this version, if you get found, you get murdered. This is definitely a horror film, especially for those who have never watched them. But the twist on the final girl trope is really well done and makes the viewer feel different than what you would expect. Somehow, you actually feel somewhat empowered.
1.
Freaky. When the announcement for Freaky was made, most people thought it would be incredibly dumb. Take the body switch element from Freaky Friday and 100 others and add a serial killer to the mix. Seems like a desperate Hollywood cash grab. But somehow, it isn't. Much of the credit for it being as good as it is goes to its stars Catherine Newton and Vince Vaughn. Watching Newton do the whole serial killer shtick is great, and Vaughn reminds us of why he was, at one time, one of the biggest names in comedy as he becomes a high school girl. The whole thing is completely ridiculous and absurd, but it works. I'm sure Freaky would have been a huge hit at the box office if it hadn't been released in the middle of the world's lockdown. So there you have it. 25 movies that could actually make you like horror movies. Let us know in the comments below about horror movies you love, or if you're one of the ones who would stay away no matter what. And as always, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. See you next time.
Be sure to click that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Share them with your friends and help us consistently conciliate curiosity. And if you want even more lists, check out these videos here or just head to our website at list25.com.